What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I'm glad you stopped by. Today I want to talk to new preppers, people that are just getting started into prepping. But honestly, I think a lot of this stuff would apply to people that have been into prepping for a long time. Maybe there'll be something on this list that I hit that you haven't thought of. And that's what anytime I do a prepping video, that's the whole idea behind it, is I want to start a conversation down in the comments. A lot of times, my audience is so good here and the commenters are so good that a lot of times the stuff that they say in the comments blows away whatever I present, here on YouTube as a presenter. So, new preppers, listen to this. If you've never heard this, this is a very important rule system to live by. The survival rule of threes. You can survive 3 minutes without breathable air. You can survive 3 hours in a harsh environment, heat or extreme heat or extreme cold. You can survive 3 days without drinkable water. You can survive 3 weeks without food. So these are things you need to think of as you're setting up your preps, right? In this video, we're not going to even focus on whether or not the air is breathable or not, because, if it was a nuclear attack or something like that, that's a whole different set of circumstances to prepare for, and you would need to get NBC masks and other things like that to protect yourself from that nuclear radiation. We're not going to focus on that in this video. That is what I would consider advanced level prepping. So what we're going to focus on is the food, the water, the protection, medical emergency supplies, basic hygiene things like that. So let's get into the list, and I numbered these 1 through 6 in order of importance. This is the order that I would go in. Number 1, water. Again, 3 days you're dead without water. So you have to have water. Water storage is a good starting point. For people that are just getting into prepping, I would be focusing on storage. How can I store water for a long amount of time? There are things you can do. Some people put the iodine pills in there. Other people use a few drops of bleach in every bottle of water that they're saving. Some people will just go to the store and buy pre-bottled, distilled, or drinking water. You can get those little plastic water bottles and stuff like that. That's a great place to start. But you're going to quickly realize that's pretty expensive, buying it from the store. So if you have good drinkable tap water coming out of your tap right there, you could filter it if you want to. That's another layer you'd have to add to it. But you could store this water, and that's the best thing you can do, is get a bunch of different containers. Sometimes I use 2 liters. I ain't gonna lie, I drink Dr. Pepper, probably a lot more than I should. But when I get rid of a Dr. Pepper 2-liter bottle, or 1 liter, or whatever they are, those other ones that are in between, I save those, and you can rinse them out and sanitize them and store fresh potable water in there for quite a while. I wouldn't count on it forever. I wouldn't put it in there under a bed or something and just forget about it, because that water could go bad over time. But I don't add anything to it. I just change it out about once a year. So if I start looking up at my water bottle collection or all my different things that I've filled up once a year, I'm going to go out in the summertime and dump that water out of the bottles onto my garden or something like that. That way I'm not wasting the water. And then I rinse them out real quick and refill them, and they're good for another year. Probably, to be honest with you, they'd probably be good for 2 years, but I like to change them once a year just to be safe. But water storage is a good starting point for any prepper to get into, especially someone who's just getting their toe in the water, because it's pretty easy to do. You can do it with food grade containers that you save. I don't think I'd use milk jugs, but probably not orange juice, anything that has a pungent flavor. And I certainly wouldn't use milk, just because it could, leave a milky taste in the water. But pretty much everything else, your juices and your other things like that, certain flavors are very pungent though, like grape juice. It'll always taste like grape juice. Now, if it's like day 2.5 and you haven't had any water, I would imagine a little bit of grape juice flavor in there wouldn't put you off that bad. You could probably go ahead and drink it. It'd be safe to drink. So just keep that in mind. You can start out really cheap. Grab this right quick out of the frame here. One of the things that I came across was I started dealing with this company that were throwing all of these, I think they're 2.5 or 3 gallon bleach containers. These were just bleach containers. They had like industrial strength bleach in them. Well, most preppers know that bleach is one of the things used to sanitize water for long term. And now, since it was, concentrated bleach, I did rinse it out really good, but it still smelled just a tiny bit bleachy when I put the water in it. But that's not going to hurt anything. Again, it might have just a slight bit of a taste or an odor, but that's not going to hurt anything as long as it's bleach and not, a foul odor or something like that. But I got these for free, and you can get stuff like that. I put the little fitting on here just to experiment with it for my animal feeders. But anyway, you can get jugs like this for free if you go and talk to people before they throw them out. Say, hey, could you stack these aside? I'll come by once a week and get them out of your way and stuff like that. As long as you don't make it inconvenient for them, a lot of times people would gladly give you their discarded trash like this, and you could use it. Just again, make sure you know what it had in it. You can't use it if it had turpentine or, motor oil or any petroleum-based product. But if it just had bleach or something like that, or soy sauce or some other thing that's food grade and food safe, then it's good to go. And something like this, if you keep it out of the sun, keep it in a closet or something like that, again, that's at least several days worth of water supply for my wife and myself in just one of these jugs. So keep your eye out for that. That's one of the ways you can get into prepping without spending a lot of money, and that's what I highly recommend you do. Also, don't buy any of these things if you're not going to use them, or if you're not a person that's either qualified and or trained up on using these items that we talk about. Number 2 on the list, you're going to need to start working on long-term food storage, and that's probably what everyone thinks of when they think of prepping. So there are 1,000,001 resources on the internet that you can go and search for. Just do a search, a non-Google search, and you'll find all sorts of stuff, lists, really comprehensive lists that have the shelf life and all sorts of great data. And there's no point in me trying to cover all that in this video. Otherwise, the video would be like 2 hours long, and nobody wants that, especially not me. So let me just give you a quick rundown of things that I'd be stocking up on if I had to start prepping today. Dry beans. They're still pretty cheap. They're not as cheap as they once were, but they're still pretty cheap. And you can get big bags of these beans and store them. I wouldn't store them in the little, 1 pound bags that have holes in them. I'd find some other way to store them, like maybe one of those cleaned out, dried out 2 liters that you saved. Or, heck, if you've got enough beans, one of those big containers like I just showed you. But some sort of a food grade storage vessel. And, some people will put a little bit of diatomaceous earth inside with their beans and rice. Supposedly, if it's food grade diatomaceous earth, it will not hurt if you consume a little bit of that on the back end. And of course, you could rinse it off. When you make dried beans, you're going to be rinsing them off. But I hear about people putting it in everything. And the whole reason for doing that is it kills little tiny bugs, weevils, and other things like that can decimate your food stores. So you have to be aware of this. So dry beans, white rice. White rice is one of those things that if you store it the right way, it will virtually last forever. So you just want to make sure that it's in a cool, dry place, out of the sun, and in a place where it's not going to pick up smells and flavors from other things stored near it. So if you're going to store a big quantity of rice, I recommend getting like some Rubbermaid containers or something like that and putting all the rice in one. That way, if there is any crossover that takes place, it'll just be other rice flavors. And white rice, I specifically said white rice because the brown rice and the other more natural rice grains, they have a lot more oils in them and they won't last as long. White rice lasts virtually forever. Now, if you like brown rice, that's fine, but it's probably only going to have maybe a 2-year shelf life, something like that, before you need to change it out. And with all of this stuff, make sure you're buying things that you will consume. That helps you keep your rotation and your stock fresh. And you might even want to, if I could give myself some more advice, kind of off topic here, but I would make a list, make an inventory of everything that you're bringing in, because my wife and I have been prepping for so long. Sometimes we're like, oh, do we have that? Oh, I don't know. We'll have to go look for it. And then that gets difficult. It's a lot easier if you either have labels or something like that you could, even sticky notes that you could put on the lid of the box of the Rubbermaid before you close it up. That way you'll know exactly what's in there. And honestly, if you're going to keep it forever and use it that way forever, you could just write on the side of the Rubbermaid, or whatever kind of container you're using. You could just write on the side of it with a magic marker, rice or whatever you have in there. But I would store things together that aren't going to have flavor crossover from like different odor profiles and things like that. You're going to want to stock up on flour, salt, powdered milk. Honey is another good one that lasts a really long time. Sugar, it's probably not going to last as long as honey for sure, but sugar is one of those staple products. You need that stuff. Instant mashed potatoes. That's one of those things that I'm not a super huge fan of them. I'd much rather have, hand mashed potatoes instead of these instant mashed potatoes. But man, when you're starving, some instant mashed potatoes would sound really good. Canned foods with an emphasis on meats, like maybe you don't like Spam, maybe it's not your favorite, but there's other things too, like canned chicken, tuna fish, all sorts of canned meats. I would stock up on that because protein is one of the most important things. Proteins and fats are the most important things you're going to need in a survival situation. It'll help you heal up quicker, all that. You need that, man. You're gonna definitely need that. Freeze-dried foods. Again, we're on the border here of getting a little bit more advanced, but most of your grocery stores now have some assortment of freeze-dried foods, and I'm trying to keep it simple for people that can just go down to the store and a little bit here and a little bit there. They can order and buy extra stuff in person at the store, and they don't have to go and order it online. But yeah, look into freeze-dried foods because they have a 25-year shelf life. That's pretty impressive. And they got all sorts of things from chicken to eggs to vegetables. You name it, they've got it in freeze-dried. And as long as you have water, clean, potable water, you can rehydrate that food, and it will be almost as good as it was when it was originally freeze-dried. Peanut butter is another great one. Again, peanut butter doesn't last forever, but if you can pick up a couple of extra jars of peanut butter and store them, and again, use them in your rotation, you'll probably use them before they expire. At least we would. We like peanut butter, so it just kind of depends on how much you use it, but peanut butter is one of those great survival foods. You'll be glad you have it, even if you don't have any bread. Getting a couple of spoonfuls of peanut butter might give you enough energy to go out there and fetch your water and, whatever you've got to do. Sanitize your water and get it ready to drink, or whatever you've got to do. Chop wood to stay warm. I mean, it's going to be a lot harder life once SHTF happens. You're going to need to store all this stuff in a cool, dry location for your maximum shelf life. Also, you're going to need a bunch more containers, as we've kind of already talked about a little bit, but think outside the box. If you like myself and my wife, we like paste picante sauce. So when you're done with a paste picante sauce jar, instead of throwing that glass jar into the trash or whatever, maybe it's barbecue sauce, the little barbecue sauce glass jars, right? You can rinse those out, sanitize them, just make sure you're being safe about all this, dry them out thoroughly, and store rice in there. Just rice, grains of rice inside it, fill it all the way up. And the reason you do that is to keep the bugs out, keep the mice away, keep it sealed up, keep the air and oxygen off of the product. And also, in a long-term SHTF scenario, if you've got all these containers that are filled up like 2 liters of rice, and maybe this 2 liter over here has all beans in it, you could take a 2 liter of beans, a 2 liter of rice, and leave your location and go out in the wild and try to trade with other people. And maybe a 2 liters too big. Maybe you want the 1.5 liters or maybe a 20 ounce even. You want some smaller bottles, but it's easy enough to save those kinds of bottles. I don't know if the water bottles would actually be very good because they're so crinkly and they make so much noise, and I don't think they're very thick. So I'd probably stay away from the small water bottles for that purpose, just because they wouldn't be very durable if you put them in your pack. But there are other things, like I said, barbecue sauce containers, things like that. Think outside of the box, and you can just reuse so much stuff that we throw away every day that you'll be amazed that in a short time, a month or two, instead of throwing your jars and things like that away, if you save them, you'll be amazed at how many you can stack up and store up. And most of these containers are designed so that they stack efficiently in tight places. So that'll help you out. But yeah, you're going to need to work on your long-term food storage, and What you get is going to be very determinant on what you like to eat. That's part of it, but also how much money you can afford to spend. I would say number 1 and number 2 are the most important, most critical things you should be focusing on in 2024. If you don't watch the rest of the video, I understand everybody's busy and stuff, but this is what you need to know. Water storage, stock up on it now while you can, and food storage. That'll help you out immensely in the long run. So those of you that want to know the rest of the story, number 3, my number 3 thing that I would be stocking up on in 2024 if I had nothing and I was just starting into prepping. Guns and ammo. And I mean a fair amount of guns and ammo. You're going to want, let's put it this way, as much as you can afford is the appropriate amount of ammo. That's how critical I think things are getting right now. And I think everyone should have a 1022 Ruger. It's a great little semi-automatic 22. And I think you should also have a reliable 22 handgun of some kind. You know, like I've got the Beretta Neos, but you know, Ruger makes several different models. The Mark series, I think is what it's called. Mark 1 through 5 or 6, whatever version they're on now. Those are great little pistols, but you want a good, reliable 22 handgun that'll feed consistently and not jam up all the time. Next up, you're going to want some sort of a pistol, like a 9mm handgun, or maybe a 45 or a 40 caliber or a 10mm, whatever you're into. Get that and get lots of magazines and, you know, lots of ammo for that thing, because at least in my opinion, that's going to be your number 1 home defense item. You know, I would usually in the middle of the night, if I hear a bump in the night, I grab my Glock 17. I love it. Love the old style, love the full size. Feels good in the hand, shoots good, it's fun to target shoot with. I've had it for, man, since like probably 2001 or 2. Really rarely have ever had a problem with it. If I've ever had a problem, it's only been because of either the mag wasn't seated in there all the way or the ammo had a problem with it. But otherwise, it's been flawless. Highly recommend that. And you can get lots of accessories for the G17 and G18. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I can't tell you exactly, or else YouTube will, you know, shadow ban my video or whatever. It's so stupid. I would also have a 12 or a 20 gauge pump action shotgun. You know, as I've gotten older, I'm starting to be a lot more attracted to the 20 gauge because, you know, yeah, the 12 gauge, it packs a good wallop, and, you know, I could see, you know, that if you're over 60, I would imagine, you know, unless you're the exception to the rule, I would imagine that you start thinking of your firearms a lot differently. And, you know, I just imagine myself as, you know, a 75, 80-year-old man having to, you know, patrol my house or something like that with a 12 gauge that's going to wallop your shoulder big time. I mean, I don't know. A 20 kind of sounds better in a lot of ways, and especially for people that can't handle the recoil of a 12 gauge. And I can still handle it. Don't get me wrong. I still love it. But I can see in the future I may love it less. You're also going to need a hunting rifle for longer range shooting. And so you can pick your own poison. I like 308, but I've also got a couple of 30-30s because the area that I live in, it's mostly hill to hill. So really it's rare that I'm going to be taking a shot in my area more than 150 yards or something like that. So really below that, a 30-30 can handle it. But I still have a 308 just in case I have to reach out a little farther, like maybe say I have to go out 600-700 yards, something like that. It's good to have a good hunting rifle that can be used for all sorts of things when SHTF comes. Last on the list, you're going to need a good battle rifle. And with all of these things, you're going to need to be trained up on how to operate them, how to clean them, how to service them. You know, what happens if a spring breaks inside of your AR-15 or your AK-47 or whatever. You need to know how to work on that stuff, at least to a basic level. And you need to have the tools to work on that as well. So Now's the time, guys. While the internet's still functioning, you can go on there and see, okay, what's the most common thing that goes wrong with an AR-15 platform? And you could buy a replacement spring kit or whatever you think it might be and have that in your SHTF, maybe not your bug out bag, but in one of your storage containers. Number 4, tools. Lots of tools. You're going to need all kinds of tools, mainly for repairing anything that you may that may break on you during SHTF. Like if you're using your generator a whole lot, or if it's certain types of grid down collapse, maybe if it's economic collapse, everything's still functioning if you can afford to buy it, but you can't afford to pay the mechanic. So now you're going to have to be your own mechanic during that type of SHTF event. Or if it's an EMP or something like that, if you know the sensitive electronics inside of your vehicle that you could have spares of in a Faraday cage, then you might be able to go out there and patch that thing up and have a vehicle. Could you imagine how powerful that would make you? And also how much of a target that would make you if you had one of the last running vehicles around. These are things to think about. But you're going to want basic hand tools. You see behind me, I've got wrenches and saws and screwdrivers and everything like that. You're going to need your basic hand tools. You're going to need LED flashlights and extra batteries and probably a way to charge those with the sun. You're going to need a battery-powered or hand crank radio so that you can tune in to emergency broadcast stations and things like that and find out what's going on. I didn't write it on the list here, but I also feel it's very important for new preppers to get into some two-way radios at very least. A good set of two-way radios. I happen to like the MURS, M-U-R-S frequency. It's used in like commercial applications a lot, but it's not as popular of a bandwidth as the FRP, I think it is what it's called. The other one that's family radio or whatever. That one's got all of the little kids' walkie-talkies. I think it's called FRP. That one has all of those people that buy the little cheap walkie-talkies at Walmart and give them to their kids. Their kids are going to be on those frequencies. And so once SHTF happens, a lot of parents are going to be commandeering those from the kids and using them themselves, and they're going to be flooding that frequency with chatter. And MURS is a lot less known. It's a lot less common. So that's why I picked that. And also MURS does very well through wooded areas and things like that. So I've been really happy with the ones I've got. Can't remember the brand of them right off the top of my head, but I did a review video on them when I first got them, and they've held up well. So you're going to want all that stuff. You're going to want a manual can opener, because one of the things, I'm not sure if I mentioned that or not, but you're going to want canned foods. Well, obviously, if the power's down, you can't use your electric can opener, so you're going to have a manual can opener. Now, a lot of your multi-tools will have a can opener feature, or your old-fashioned Swiss Army knife, but you're going to need a way to open cans reliably. And you don't want it to be a big pain in the ass, so test it out before the SHTF comes to make sure you have the proper equipment that you're going to need. Simple things like matches, lighters, candles, and camping stoves. That can help you survive through SHTF. Knives, rope, duct tape, and work gloves are all going to be really important, because even if you have a job where you're in an office right now pushing paper, to survive SHTF, you're going to be chopping wood. You're going to be doing things, carrying water. You're going to be doing things that you wouldn't have normally had to do in your previous spoiled American life. We're talking 1850 survival skills. You're going to need them. Generator or solar backup system. I know it's all the rage right now. They have these solar battery backup things, and those are fine. I highly recommend, and I've thought about getting one myself. I'd like to do some testing on them to see how long they'll run a refrigerator, or a refrigerator and a freezer, that sort of thing. But I would say you're also going to need a good old-fashioned, noisy as hell gas generator. And then you're going to have to figure out how to make that generator less noisy so that people can't triangulate your position. And there's lots of videos on that here on YouTube. You're going to want a grill, and I think I already said camp stove, or a solar cooker. There's lots of videos on these solar cookers. Pick the one you like. I like that great big one that I saw Wrangler Star using a while back. I think if you had that, it's basically a parabolic lens mirror thing that you aim toward the sun. You put a pot on it, and I mean, you can almost instantly boil water on something like that. So I'm really fascinated by those because most of the time, we have sunny days here where I am. I mean, so yeah, you might have a cloudy day or two where you couldn't use the solar cooker, but what I love about it is you don't have to run a generator. You don't have to use fuel. It's just powered by the sun. So you might want to look into some of those. There are also some solar ovens as well. I'm going to make that one of my goals here, bucket list for 2024. Look into solar ovens and these other solar cookers. I think that'd be a great thing that I need to get. You'll need an axe, you'll need a splitting maul, and some hand saws for taking care of firewood in the future. Oh yeah, you'll need a shovel and a pickaxe for burying all the bodies, because I think there'll be a lot of bodies stacking up in a true SHTF event. So number 5, first aid and basic hygiene. You're going to want adhesive bandages, cotton balls, gauze rolls, and pads. You're going to want alcohol, triangular bandages. You're going to want some of those, what do they call those? The ones that, butterfly bandages, the ones you can pull across a big open gash and close it up. You're going to definitely want that. And I kind of brushed over it, but alcohol is a really important one. Rubbing alcohol. Get that stuff, stock up on it, stack it to the ceiling. You can get really big jugs of it. I've got a gallon of it back here that you probably can't see on the camera right now, but I've got a brand new sealed gallon of the stuff that my wife got because after the COVID hysteria settled down, then all of a sudden these people were, Walmart and all these stores were stocked up on these large quantities of hand sanitizer and alcohol. So get some of that while you can, while it's still cheap. You're going to want first aid tape, I can hardly ever say that, antibiotic ointment. You're going to want antiseptic wipes, medications like pain and fever relievers, so like aspirin, ibuprofen, things like that. Your anti-diarrhea medicines and anti-allergy medicines. Those are all going to be critical when SHTF happens, because you're not going to be able to go to the store and buy them, and you don't want to have to trade away your precious stockpiles for things that you forgot to get. So that anti-diarrhea medicine, that immediately sparks a thought in my mind that one of the things that kills people, it seems like more than any other thing, is dysentery or extreme diarrhea and vomiting and stuff like that, because you can't keep any fluids down. So of course, one of the things that causes dysentery more than anything else is eating food that was not prepared properly or that has spoiled, and or water that has that bacteria in it that can get inside you and mess you up. So make sure that you don't end up getting dysentery when the SHTF happens, or you'll be in a real world of shit. So you're going to want like a first aid guide or some sort of a, prepper medicine books and things like that. All sorts of books. Right now is the time to buy books on survival and, bushcraft skills, things like that you might not be able to go to the internet and look up in the future. You're going to want bar soap to keep yourself clean, because no one's going to want to be around you if you're stinking real bad like sour milk and ass. So make sure you keep yourself clean. The reason I said that is I used to work with this guy. I was his boss, and I had to get onto this guy multiple times for not taking a shower and keeping his hygiene up. It was quite disgusting. You're going to want toothbrushes and toothpaste. Keep your oral health up to the highest level you can, because, man, the wrong kind of tooth problem can put you down quickly, even before SHTF. So you guys know, if you've ever had a cavity that hurts, you know what I'm talking about. It can make you freaking miserable. So make sure you've got toothbrushes, toothpaste, and floss, picks, and things like that to take care of your dental hygiene. You're going to want feminine hygiene products for your ladies. And even if you don't have any ladies in your lives, stock up on some of those now anyway, because you might have a lady coming in the future, or who the heck knows, you might be able to use them for bartering. Who knows what the value of one tampon would be in the future. It might equate to a can of beans, another meal to keep you alive. So these are things to think about. Now, again, if you don't have any females in your household or in your life, then feminine hygiene products would be super low on the list. I would get everything else done first before I stocked up on things that I didn't need, that I might need for future bartering. Toilet paper, I mean, you could argue whether or not that's an important one. It's a nice luxury to have right now, but I wouldn't stock up on it too much, because there's going to be a point when you have to switch over to getting your old rag bag out. You know, I don't know if you guys do this or not, but I think everybody does it. But what we'll do is, if I've got an old t-shirt that I've just worn through and it can't be washed anymore because it's coming apart, instead of throwing it away, we put it in what we call the rag bag. And usually we only use that for like when we need to clean something and we just want to throw the rag away after that. But in SHTF situation, you might be using that rag bag and the contents for wiping your ass to stay clean. And you know, on that note, probably be a good idea to get like some baby wipes or man wipes or whatever you want to get to help keep yourself clean, because you might not be able to get a shower for several days. So keep yourself clean. That'll keep your skin healthy and keep you from getting all that weird chafing that us guys have to go through every time the seasons change. But at least that's how it is for me. Hand sanitizer, I mentioned earlier, a lot of times you can buy these giant jugs that they never sold during the COVID hysteria. You can buy these for pennies on the dollar when you couldn't find it at all during the COVID thing. Remember that? And then all of a sudden the supply chain caught up and now there's a huge glut. You know, at this time making this video, there may not be much of that left at this point, but they were selling that stuff for fairly cheap. And even if you can't get it for that cheap, you should at least get some of it, because hand sanitizer is one of those things. It usually, most of the stuff that I've used is heavy with alcohol. And what that means is you could use a squirt of that stuff to help you for fire starter and things like that. And also use it for hand sanitizer and keep yourself clean and less likely to get skin infections and problems like that. And last on the list here of first aid and basic hygiene is you're going to need a way to handle your shit. You're going to have to deal with your human waste. And if everything's off and your plumbing is no longer working, you don't want to be leaving human waste in your toilet bowl inside. So my advice, no matter where you are, have a bucket. Get yourself a 5-gallon plastic bucket. And you can go over to Walmart or probably order it online if you prefer. And you can get one of these camping style toilet lid, seat bucket lid thing. It's made to go on top of a bucket. It clamps on. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world because I've used them before, but it's better than sitting on the rim of the bucket. It gives you a little something, a little ledge to sit on there while you do your business, you know, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I sit down to take a dump, I mean, I'm not messing around. I want to get it all done right then. So if it takes me 20, 30 minutes, you know, to do that, then hey, so be it. I ain't worried about it. I'm not trying to get in a hurry. But my point is, you take this bucket, you cut the bottom out of it, right? I mean, I guess there's two ways to go about it. You could put like waistline or trash bags inside of there and maybe sprinkle a little dirt or cat litter or something in there and, you know, just bag it up every time and throw the bag away. But where are you going to throw it away if sanitation services are no longer coming to your property or to your area, right? You no longer have trash service because the trash man is staying home taking care of his family, right? So if that's the situation, then my advice is cut the bottom out of the bucket. Take your shovel that I mentioned you're going to need earlier and go out and dig several holes when the ground's not frozen. And then you can take your bucket and move it from hole to hole and bury it after you're done. And I don't know, to be honest with you, if that's even legal anymore to make a mobile outhouse like that. It probably isn't, depending on your state. But it doesn't matter because we're talking about without rule of law. So nobody's going to be coming. No cops are going to come and mess with you for taking a shit in your yard because they're going to be shitting in their own yards. So the last thing on the list here, number 6, it's very important. And it's very important to do it right now while prices are relatively low. Rugged outdoor footwear and clothing. I can't tell you how many people I see out and about, and I can just tell, you know, they're wearing like Crocs and shorts and stuff like this. And I'm like, man, if shit happens right now, you're in trouble. You don't want those kinds of shoes. And that's, you know, maybe that's something that is a bad part of my personality, but that's the way my personality works. I almost always want to be ready for SHTF scenario because I think it could happen at any moment. So I'd never be caught dead outside away from my house in some sort of inappropriate footwear like that. You can't see it right now, but I almost always wear work boots, heavy leather work boots, the best ones you can afford to buy. Now, I don't have, Nicks or any of these other fancy $500 pair of work boots. I've got like Wolverines or something like that are like $100 a pair, but I've had really good luck with them and they last me for quite a while and they'll keep my feet from freezing up, especially if I wear like wool socks or something like that. They'll keep my feet warm in colder weather. They're on the verge of being a little bit too hot for summertime, but I can manage. I can usually manage it. If you have to, you can loosen up the laces, but that's really important. Your pants. You want some really rugged pants that, jean material or something, or I can't remember what these are, Cordura or something like that. There's another material that's similar to the jeans. I really like the Wrangler rigs. That's what I wear most of the time. They're made and designed for work pants, but they're also a cargo pant. So you've got lots of places to store extra magazines and extra, bag of beans or whatever you might be carrying with you, right? Your knives and different things. I like cargo style pants because of that. And I want some that are real durable. Another thing I've been doing here lately, speaking of clothing, is if my wife goes into town and goes by a military surplus store or something like that, or even at Goodwill, I'm having her constantly look for used and like new BDUs. So camouflage pants and I like woodland camo. You can get whatever you like, but I don't think desert camo is going to work very good in my area. And I don't really like the look of the digital camo. So I've been going for old fashioned Vietnam era woodland camo. It blends in so good. I mean, I can disappear in the woods if I put on that woodland camo and you wouldn't be able to find me unless you knew exactly where to look. So that's the point. You want to make sure and have all of your bases covered, have heavy duty jackets for wintertime, warm weather gear, some different hats and different things that'll keep your ears from freezing off, because as we've seen all across the United States this last week, the bottom can drop right out of this thing. And imagine for a moment if you didn't have a wood stove and you didn't have a way to turn a heater on because the power grid was down. What would you do? How would you heat your house? How would you, stay warm enough, even without heat? How would you stay warm enough to survive? And there's lots of ways to do that. Heavy duty blankets and things like that, and, heavy duty clothes, tripling up on your layers and things. All of that stuff can help you, but you'll probably still be pretty miserable for the most part because you're going to be cold. And so, more advanced stuff would be, find some way to install a wood stove in your house so that you could, burn firewood to stay warm as an emergency source of heat. Although that's really frowned upon now. And a lot of your insurance companies will cancel you if you install a wood stove in your home. And so, yeah, it's getting harder and harder to do this kind of stuff. And I would argue the more of it you can do, the better off you'll be and the better you'll sleep at night. At least that's how it is for me. So guys, I appreciate you stopping by and tuning in. I stand for liberty to the bitter end. I hope you do too.